You know what happened last time. You studied it. You read about it. You watched it unfold and told yourself, next time I will see it coming. That preparation felt real. It was real. And it is exactly what is going to get you caught off guard again. Here is why. The next crisis is not going to look like the last one. It never does. The preparation you built was built for a specific shape of danger, a specific sequence of events, a specific set of warning signs, and the next crisis is going to arrive in a completely different shape. It is not going to trigger the recognition you trained. It is going to look like something else entirely, until it is too late to look like anything other than what it actually is. The confidence you feel right now is not protection. It is the specific vulnerability the next crisis is designed to find, because every crisis exploits the lesson everyone learned from the previous one. That is not a coincidence. That is the pattern. If you want videos that show you not just what happened, but the pattern that keeps repeating underneath it, subscribe now. That is exactly what this channel is built for. Think about the last time you felt truly caught off guard, not annoyed, not surprised in a small way, caught off guard in a way that stayed with you. There was a moment before that moment, a moment where you felt steady, where you felt like you understood the shape of things. That feeling did not come from nothing. It came from somewhere real. You had seen something like it before. You had learned from it. You had built a model in your mind, a model of what danger looks like, a model of what to watch for. And that model worked for a while. It worked right up until the moment it did not. This is not only about money. Think about a relationship that ended in a way you never expected. You had learned from the last one. You knew the signs of distance. You knew the signs of dishonesty. You watched for those signs carefully. And the relationship that hurt you this time did not show you any of them. It showed you something else, something your training did not cover. Think about a health scare that came from a direction you never checked. You had learned to watch your heart. You had learned to watch your weight. And the thing that actually happened came from somewhere you never thought to look. Think about a career setback that arrived without warning. You had learned to watch for layoffs during downturns. The downturn never came. The company grew. And then, without any of the signs you had learned to fear, your role simply disappeared. In every one of these moments, there is a quiet, uncomfortable detail. You were not unprepared. You were prepared for the wrong shape. This is the part that is hard to sit with. Preparation is not a general shield. It is a specific shape, built from a specific memory. Your mind does not store danger as an abstract idea. It stores danger as a scene, a sequence, a set of details that happened in a particular order at a particular time. And when your mind goes looking for danger again, it is not looking for danger in general. It is looking for that scene, that sequence, those details. If the next danger does not match the scene, your mind does not raise the alarm. It stays quiet. It lets the danger walk right past the checkpoint you built. This is why the people who study the past the hardest are often the ones who get hurt again in ways that feel personal. Not because they did not care, not because they did not try, because trying, in this case, means building a very specific kind of readiness. And specific readiness has a narrow field of vision. Look at the pattern across decades, and it becomes impossible to ignore. The crisis of the late 20s in the last century taught a generation to fear certain kinds of excess, certain kinds of borrowing, certain kinds of speculation. That generation built rules, real rules, rules that held for a long time. And when the danger finally returned decades later, it did not return through the door those rules were guarding. It returned through a door nobody had thought to lock, because nobody had been hurt by that door before. Move forward again, and the same shape repeats. The crisis that struck in 2008 taught an entire generation of investors and institutions to fear housing debt, to fear complex financial instruments built on shaky foundations, to fear a slow, hidden buildup of risk inside the banking system. People rebuilt their models around that shape. New regulations were written around that shape. New instincts were trained around that shape. And then 2020 arrived. It did not come from housing. It did not come from banks. It came from a virus. It came from a global shutdown nobody had modeled for, arriving in weeks instead of years. The people who were most confident they had learned the lesson of 2008 were often the ones most surprised by what happened next. Not because they were careless, because their entire model of danger had been built, carefully, around a door that this new danger simply did not use. Now think about what happens next. The people who lived through 2020 are doing exactly what every generation before them did. They are building a new model, a model shaped by lockdowns, a model shaped by supply chains breaking, a model shaped by sudden global disruption. They are watching for the next pandemic, the next global shock, the next sudden stop. And somewhere in that watching, a quiet assumption has formed, the assumption that the next crisis will at least rhyme with this one. It will not. It cannot, because that is not how the pattern works. The pattern is not that crises repeat their shape. The pattern is that crises specifically avoid the shape everyone just learned to recognize. This is not a strange coincidence that happens to occur. It is closer to a structural fact about how risk builds up in any complex system. Money, attention, and caution do not disappear after a crisis. They move. They move directly away from the danger everyone just learned to fear, which means, by simple pressure, risk accumulates somewhere else, in a place nobody is watching, because everyone is still watching the last fire. The safest looking door in any system is often the door nobody checks anymore, and the door nobody checks anymore is usually the one guarding last year's danger, not this year's. This is the part where most explanations stop and offer you a solution, a checklist, a new set of signs to watch for, a new model to replace the old one. This is not that kind of video, because building a new model for this year's danger only prepares you for this year. The next one is still coming from somewhere else. Right now, pause for a moment and notice something about your own life. Notice the specific danger you feel most prepared for. Maybe it is a market downturn. Maybe it is a job loss. Maybe it is a health event you have already planned around. Whatever it is, notice how solid that preparation feels. Notice how calm it makes you. That calm is not false. The preparation behind it is not wasted. But hold that calm gently and ask a harder question underneath it. What if the thing that actually finds you is not that? What if it is something you have never had a reason to prepare for, because nothing like it has happened to you yet? That is not a comfortable question. It is not meant to be comfortable. It is meant to sit there quietly while we look at exactly how this pattern works. Before we continue, drop a comment right now. Was there a moment when you were completely sure you were prepared, and then reality arrived in a shape you never expected? Tell me below. I read every single one. Let us look at what is actually happening inside your mind when you feel prepared. Your brain does not store the past as a story. It stores it as a template built from the exact texture of what hurt you, the sound of the news that day, the specific numbers that fell, the specific words people used to describe what was happening. All of that becomes fused into a single pattern, and your brain treats that pattern as the definition of danger itself, not as one example of danger, as the definition. This is efficient. It is fast. It is how a mind survives without analyzing every single event from first principles. But it has a cost, and the cost is precision. A mind tuned precisely to one shape of danger becomes, in a strange way, less able to notice a different shape. It is not that you become careless in general. It is that your attention becomes a spotlight, not a floodlight. A spotlight is bright. A spotlight is focused. A spotlight shows you exactly what it is aimed at, in sharp detail, but everything outside that beam stays dark. And the next danger, by definition, is standing outside the beam. Because if it were standing inside the beam, you would already see it coming, and it would not be able to catch you off guard. This is the quiet cruelty of the pattern. The more effort you put into understanding the last danger, the sharper and narrower your spotlight becomes. The sharper your spotlight becomes, the more confident you feel. The more confident you feel, the less you scan the darkness around it. And the next danger needs exactly one thing to succeed. It needs you looking somewhere else. Consider how this plays out with money specifically, since that is where this channel spends most of its time. After a debt crisis, people become extremely alert to debt. They watch leverage ratios. They watch lending standards. They watch for the signs that hurt them last time. Meanwhile, an entirely different kind of risk is quietly building somewhere nobody in that debt-focused mindset is watching. It could be concentration in a small number of companies. It could be a new kind of connection between markets that did not exist before. It could be something in the structure of how people now save, invest, or borrow that has never been tested by a real crisis. Nobody is watching it closely because nobody has been burned by it yet. And that is precisely the condition a new danger needs to grow undisturbed. This is not a prediction about what the next specific crisis will be. Naming it would defeat the entire point. The moment you have a name for the next danger, you have built a new spotlight. And the pattern simply moves again. The point is not to guess the next shape. The point is to notice what your certainty is actually made of. Ask yourself honestly, when you feel prepared right now, what is that feeling built from? Is it built from a genuine open scan of what could go wrong in ways you have never seen? Or is it built from a specific memory, replayed until it feels like general wisdom? Most people's answer, if they are honest, is the second one. That is not shameful. It is simply how a mind works. But the feeling of being ready and the state of being ready are two different things. Sometimes they move in opposite directions entirely. Now think about the cost of this and notice it is not the cost you would expect. The cost is not simply losing money or losing time or losing security when the next event arrives. Those losses matter, but underneath them is a quieter cost, one that is harder to name. The cost is the gap between how protected you believed you were and how exposed you actually were the entire time. That gap is where the real damage lives. Because it is not only the event that hurts, it is the collapse of a story you had been telling yourself. A story that said, I learned from what happened. I will not be caught like that again. When the next event arrives wearing an unfamiliar shape, that story does not just fail quietly. It fails loudly all at once in the exact moment you needed it to hold. And in that moment, there is often a strange kind of confusion before the fear even arrives. A sense of, this does not match anything I prepared for. This is not supposed to be happening this way. That confusion is not a personal failure. It is the direct, predictable result of a mind doing exactly what minds are built to do. Learning specifically, trusting that learning generally. There is one more layer to this pattern worth sitting with, because it explains why it never seems to stop. Every round of preparation does not just fail to cover the next danger. It actively shapes where the next danger is able to grow. Because once enough people are watching one door closely, that door becomes, in effect, the safest place in the entire system. Not because it was ever the safest place, but because attention itself has a cost, and nobody has attention left over to also watch every other door with the same intensity. So risk drifts toward wherever the crowd has stopped looking. This is not a flaw in human behavior that could be fixed with more discipline. It is closer to a law of how attention and risk interact inside any group of people who have all learned the same lesson at the same time. The very act of everyone becoming prepared for the same danger is what quietly clears the path for a different one. Sit with that for a moment. Your preparation is not just personal. It is part of a much larger, invisible shift, one you cannot see from the inside, because you are one of the people whose attention just moved. You did not choose to look away from the next danger. You were simply looking very carefully at the last one, along with almost everyone else who had also been hurt by it. That is not carelessness. That is the pattern working exactly as it always has. So where does that leave you right now? Sitting with this, not with a checklist, not with a new spotlight to aim somewhere else, because the moment this video gives you a new specific thing to fear, it becomes just another narrow beam, waiting to be outdated by whatever comes after it. What actually changes, if anything changes at all, is smaller and quieter than that. It is simply knowing clearly that the feeling of being ready is not the same thing as being ready. It is knowing that your calm right now is calibrated, specifically to a shape that has already passed. It is holding your own confidence a little more loosely than you did before you watched this, not abandoning it, not replacing it with anxiety, just knowing what it actually is and what it is not. The next crisis is not going to ask if you studied the last one. It is going to arrive in the exact shape your preparation did not train you to recognize. And the confidence you built will be the last thing you question before you realize what is happening. If this changed the way you think about the preparation you have already built, subscribe now. Every week, this channel shows you not just what the last crisis taught, but what the next one is already